but it will hopefully be very practical and helpful to all of you in your practices. We're going to focus on Hispanic estate planning, and I'll introduce Sonia, who's our primary speaker, in a moment. Peak Trust and Interactive Legal are two of our sponsors, and we're going to feature a charity, which I've tried to do on many of my programs momentarily. And I just want to announce that shortly, Shenkman Education will be a new website I'm launching with all my educational material. The handout materials are on the web console. They'll be posted to Shenkman Education, to Interactive Legal's website, and to Peak Trust Company's website after the program. And if you have any problem, email me, let me know. We do not give formal CLE or CPE credits. Teresa, why don't you talk to us about Interactive Legal?
I will. Thank you, Marty. As always, Interactive Legal is pleased to sponsor today's presentation. Marty always has great topics. And again, we're pleased to be here, and we'll have the recording and handouts on our website as well. Interactive Legal provides automated document assembly systems with a brain trust of authors and advisors behind the language in our documents, including Marty. And we also provide estate planning and elder law education. If you go to interactivelegal.com, you can view our upcoming programs, including our fall estate planning tax academy, which is actually underway right now. You can still register late if you would like to do so. And you can also take a guided tour of the document assembly systems by scheduling a live demo. But I'm really looking forward to this topic, and thanks for including us today, Marty. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, our pleasure. Our other sponsor who couldn't join us is Peak Trust Company. I personally have had a trust with Peak since 1998. Then they were Alaska Trust Company. And apropos to our topic today and the charity that we're going to feature in a second, Peak, as one of the smaller, more nimble administrative trust companies, has been absolutely incredible in terms of helping address and being flexible to address the human aspects of planning. They have offices in Nevada and Alaska, and we have worked with them on an ongoing basis on trust administration for some very complex plans, but as I pointed out, also the human element of the planning. Let me take a second to introduce a charity that I want to feature, Tannenbaum. Without getting into any detail, the world to me is a very worrisome place. And one of the reasons it's so worrisome is everybody's angry about something. And a fascinating thing, and this is appropriate to our topic today, and something I've been doing since the 1970s, yes, I'm that old, is learning about other people, whether it be religions, lifestyles, cultures, countries of origin. It's fascinating. It's very hard to hate somebody when you understand them. It's very hard to hold biased, ignorant beliefs when you actually let a little sunlight knowledge in. And one of the organizations that has, and I'm going to let Reverend Fowler explain the mission that is so critical at this point in time, is Tannenbaum. So Reverend Fowler, tell everybody what amazing stuff you do at Tannenbaum and why everybody should want to get involved. And just to be blunt, because he's going to be more politically correct than me, if you have clients that are looking to make an impact on the state of the world, this is an organization to tell them to talk to. Reverend Fowler.
Well, thank you so much, Marty. I hardly feel like I have anything to say after such a generous introduction. And to all of your listeners and viewers and those watching the recording, I'm Mark Fowler. I'm the CEO of the Tannenbaum Center for and non-sectarian not-for-profit. Our mission is to combat religious prejudice, to promote justice, and to build respect for religious differences in the 4 program areas that you see on your screen. And we do this by working with both individuals and institutions, hopefully transform their policies, their practices, and provide opportunities for people to learn from one another. one of the activities that we often engage in as an introduction is to ask people, what does respect look like? What does it sound like? And what does it feel like? And in that activity, people immediately begin to see that while we all may have a commitment to respect, the way it actually shows up in real time and in real life can be very different. But that becomes the foundation for the ways in which we explore learning with one another and create cultures that allow for the exploration of religious differences and all differences. We work in global workplaces, large not-for-profits, government agencies. We work in education, in school systems with teachers and with students. In healthcare, we provide training and resources for medical providers around the ways in which patients and families want to incorporate their religious and spiritual beliefs in their entire treatment care system. And we also work in the world of peace building, where we identify and support the work of religious actors working in conflict zones around the world. You can find out more information about our organization at tannenbaum.org, and you can also email us at info@tannenbaum.org.
I'll add the email to the end. Thank you. Really, really an important cause and does great work. I'm fascinated personally by what's done in the medical profession. So often clients come to me, and when I ask about religious beliefs, nah, not really interested. But I explore it usually with a follow-up question, because my experience has been when somebody's well and any kind of health issues not even on the radar screen, not so worried. When somebody's looking death in the eye and not well or struggling or in pain, their views of their own faith often change dramatically. And another point, and again, this is a niche that Tannenbaum really can help explore and educate for all of us, is I rarely see families, no offense to anybody watching, I rarely see families where everyone's of the same faith. It's often a mixture of different faiths, different beliefs. Even if they're the same religion, there's so many different levels and interpretations. So this is really a vitally important conversation. And I know that you're on a time limit, and I appreciate you jumping on to give us some insight. And I thought it was just very appropriate for the topic that we're doing today. And Teresa, I want to thank you and thank Peak Trust as well. We're going to get started, and we're going to address planning for the Hispanic community. And before we do that, I want to introduce Sonia. Sonia, tell everyone who you are and how wonderful you are. I'll tell them how wonderful you are, but tell everyone who you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sonia Muñoz Gallagher. I am an estate planning and probate attorney in Florida. I've been an attorney for 21 years, and I'm from Puerto Rico. I immigrated here when I was 8 because my parents divorced. So I learned at a very early age the power of education, the power of family, and the power of a very strong, the strongest warrior I've got in my life, which is mommy. I'm in my 40s and I still call her mommy. That's cultural. God forbid I call her mom. Those are fighting words. And I'm just really grateful to be here today, Marty. I mean, wow, this is an honor. This is a real honor. As an attorney and as a Hispanic, thank you for allowing this.
So let me and Reverend Fowler, just stick around for 30 seconds. I just want to give some context for me to why I'm doing this program. In the 70s, I went on a program called World Campus Afloat. It's now called Semester at Sea, that travels around the world. And it was a fascinating approach to life and forever changed my life. Before you would go to a country, they would fly to the prior port professors that spoke English from that country and lectures on board about the history, the culture, the religion, everything about the country you're going to, so that when you got to the country and you had homework assignments, which they gave us, it wasn't reading a textbook, it was going to a temple, it was going to a historic site and relating everything back. And it really changed my perspective on the world and life. And as early as the 80s, I started writing in my first book. And I remember having a tangle with the major New York publisher where they didn't want me to have appendices on Islamic estate planning and gay and lesbian estate planning. The LGBTQ moniker didn't exist back then. And in the early 90s, I did a series of articles for the New Jersey Law Journal on different faiths. And it was a fascinating experience. And I didn't just read about something. I'd go and I'd spend a day or more at a temple and talk to really knowledgeable people and work with them on these presentations. And I've continued that. If you feel that there's any faith, culture, religion that's not, that I haven't done a webinar on to help create these materials, to help estate planners and practitioners and people, let me know. Volunteer to help me like Sonia did. I kind of snookered her into this, but I'm happy to do programs on any topic that you feel I haven't covered. So I wanted to say that. So Sonia, tell us a little bit about the Hispanic community, and then I'm going to tell you something about me after you give us some introduction.
So number one, I'm super happy to be able to do this. This is amazing. You don't have to sneak me into doing this at all. Oh goodness, what can I tell you about the Hispanic community?
How large is the Hispanic community? Does it have any economic clout? Why should people be, I mean, apart from just humanity, why should people practicing estate planning, tax planning, financial planning, why should they be interested in this segment of the population?
Well, it's about 20% of the population.
65 million people.
65 million.
Yeah, I think that's on the next slide.
You can open that slide.
It's one of the fastest growing components of the US population. And in order to better help clients and work with colleagues, it's helpful to have some understanding. Tell me about the grandmother on the slide. What's that about?
Let's see.
You had a story you told me about a grandmother insisting on bequeathing something to every child, even one she's been alienated from for years.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't have that in front of me. Okay. So.
No worries.
In the Hispanic community, there are grandparents that typically, you know, I've seen this firsthand where they want to skip generation, basically. They want to leave things to the grandchildren. However, there's a lot of misinformation in this community. So they'll say it out loud, or they'll say it to the child, to the adult child, this is to go to the grandchild, but then nothing is written. So the biggest problem in this community is lack of information. And it's lack of trust. There's distrust, not trust as in revocable trust, that also, but there's a lot of distrust because of where they're coming from, because of what they have experienced when they immigrated here, because of what they've seen on TV, because there's a lot of, oh, the neighbor told me. So like I mentioned to you earlier in one of our conversations, with this community, it's not really about impressing them with your credentials or where you went to school or all of your diplomas. It's more about connecting with them on a human level, respecting them, like what you spoke about earlier with the Reverend, respecting their idiosyncrasy, their family. So it's more human. There's a big human element as opposed to just the drafting and the tax implications.
Sonia, let me ask you a question. And we're certainly not going to get into anything political about what's going on in the world today, but the distrust that you feel many Hispanic clients have, if I was understanding correctly, and maybe I wasn't, relates back not just to their experience in the US, but to their experience in their home countries before they came here, or their parents or grandparents' experience in their home countries where banks and government institutions were not trustworthy, banks would fail. Why don't you just elaborate a bit on that? And we'll come back to this in a few slides ahead where we talk about assets, so you don't have to get into that now. But you mentioned mistrust, and I think it'd be helpful for people that aren't there to understand a little deeper what that means.
Right, what they're coming from. So there's a lot of countries in Latin America where political officials are not, just the political climate is not stable. And the people, come here for stability, for a better life, for the American dream. So they come here knowing that assuming that it's better under that assumption, but then they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable to specific people, to notaries is one of them. They're vulnerable to, a lot of people that just, are predators to new immigrants in this country. And because they come with that mentality that the government is not really trustworthy in their country, or attorneys are not trustworthy, or simply that the system is different, because that's another thing, aside from not trusting the people in power, it's also that the system is different. And I'll give you examples on that. Then you've got kind of an uphill battle to go through, because you have to really educate them while identifying and relating to them. So when I work with Hispanics, I tend to speak in Spanish or Spanglish, or both, because, to the grandparents, I speak to them in Spanish. I explain every single word that they're, when I draft, I give them two versions, English and Spanish. So it's a little bit of extra work. And I know this is flat fee, but I love working with my community and I believe in empowering them. So it's worth it. But then the adult daughter, that is typically the right hand, we'll talk about that, the family dynamics, that one's going to speak in, Spanglish. So it's different because they're coming from a different government with a different system and a different trust and mentality. So you have to get past that, explain to them that the United States is much more stable and that there are specific legal tools here to protect them, whether they are legally here as a legal immigrant or illegally here, because that's another thing that comes into play with this community. A lot of people assume that because they are visa holders, or because their visa expired, or because their green card was revoked, or because they may have a deportation order in action right now, that they cannot have a trust, that they cannot have a durable power of attorney, that they cannot have a pre-need guardianship assigned for their children. So that's another aspect of working with the Hispanic community that I educate a lot actively on, because anyone that has a house, can lose their home if they're deported or if they have to voluntarily leave, and the HOA fees, just keep racking up, and then they lose their home to the HOA. So it's specific tools that are available to them that are not necessarily like a complete estate plan, but that are extremely powerful in helping them. And of course, a pre-need guardianship designation is phenomenal for people that have minors, and maybe those are US citizens. So things like that.
One of the things I think we should talk about is how diverse the community is, because to talk about a Hispanic community as a monolith isn't right. Maybe you can comment, and on the slide, it just indicates the diversity of countries of origin. Maybe just comment on that.
There is such a difference in cultures that are Hispanic. We're all Hispanic. So like, for example, for me, I'm Puerto Rican. People ask me, are you Arabic? People ask me, are you Brazilian? People ask me, Venezuelan, Colombian. They don't really guess Puerto Rico until I start talking in Spanish, and then my Puerto Rican sing-song comes out, and then they know immediately. So in Puerto Rico, there's a mix of African, Taino, and Spaniard. And of course, there's Jewish, there's Arabic, there's a plethora, but the majority of the blood of the DNA is those three: African, Taino, which were the natives, and then Spain. I am more Spain, obviously, so, but I have family members that are redheads with green eyes. And then I have family members that are, you know, darker skinned. So it's a whole spectrum of colors, which is why it's so awesome. And then Puerto Rico has a very different history to, let's say, Venezuela. You know, Puerto Rico is a commonwealth of the United States. So I am a US citizen just because I was born. Just because I was born. I did not have to get a green card. I did not have to apply for citizenship. I was born, boom, I'm a US citizen. A lot of people, believe it or not, don't know that. So this is really important to know. Puerto Rico is a US commonwealth. For example, Venezuela is not. So Venezuela has a very different history. Puerto Ricans that come here would have a very different mindset about having a trust as opposed to a Venezuelan. And the reason why I mentioned Venezuela is because I work with a lot of Venezuelans, because I had an immigration law firm many moons ago. I've been an attorney for 21 years, so a few years back. So I have Venezuelan probates right now, where I have to explain to them, no, it's not that I'm gonna go drive to an office and take the death certificate like it is over there. So the systems are also different. Puerto Rico is very similar because it's US federal government that is in Puerto Rico, but it's also Napoleonic code law in Puerto Rico from Spain. So imagine doing a probate in Puerto Rico. That can be real fun. And I actually work with a lot of probate attorneys in Puerto Rico because the Puerto Rican, for example, has property here. Like I've got one right now that there's a house in Tampa, and the older gentleman is 90 years old and he's a medical doctor and he's in Puerto Rico. So there's a lot of, I love working with this community because of the international aspect, and I'm able to educate them. It's not just filling out forms, and you know, it's so much more complex, and there's a lot of players involved because the family's always involved. There's typically a couple of people that are emailing and asking. Obviously the client is asking me to copy everybody. That's one thing that us as attorneys have to always keep in mind, getting the authorization, because with this community, that's a big one. They want the right-hand child to be on top of everything along with them. So as you can see, I'm sorry.
You have to be very careful of issues of procurement of the child bringing you in. You have to be careful of issues of waiving the attorney-client privilege. You have to be careful to get authorization from the client for who you communicate with. And those things can be different than representing other clients, and you need to be alert to it, because if that's what makes the client comfortable, it's fine. Just make sure they understand the consequence and that you document that it's okay to do. I'm going to tell you something you don't know, Sonia. One of my daughter-in-laws is half Colombian. Her father is Colombian. And she is always, and I didn't know this until recently, identified herself as Hispanic on every form that she's ever filled out since she's a little girl. And I'm amazed that after so many decades in the country, her father won't celebrate Thanksgiving. So,
Because Thanksgiving is an American holiday. It's not a Colombian holiday. I celebrate it because Puerto Rico celebrates Puerto Rican holidays and American holidays.
I'm happy to celebrate almost anything. Make a party, I'll come.
Yeah, basically.
All us estate planners are party guys. All right, let's go on and talk about the population a little bit more. We had already said that it's 65 million people, 20% of the population. That is a huge demographic, and cannot be ignored by any practitioner in any field, because this is if it's not already a large part of your client base, it's gonna be. But I wanna and forgive me everyone, but we had, based on the prior exemption, it's now in 2026 going to be 15 million supposedly permanent, whatever that means in Washington. But there were about 1,500 estate tax returns that had an estate tax due under the old law. And I've seen estimates that that could drop down to 12 or 1,300 a year, 1,200 estates that pay an estate tax. Yet look at the attention and the brain power put on estate tax planning, and I'm not negating it, it's what I do for a living, but compare 1,200 people filing an estate tax return, decedents with an estate tax each year, to 65 million people of Hispanic descent. We need to refocus a little bit of our efforts on some of these human aspects of planning because it's just so fundamental. Sonia, the comment on, I guess, the 2 points on the slide, the very young age of the population and what that may mean to planning, and the economic clout of the community.
Well, they're definitely going to be the decision makers, and we don't really know what jobs they're going to have because AI is here. So, you know, it's hard to even know whether these people are going to own homes, or it's difficult. You know, there are things that are the human aspect of things, not the tax stuff, but like just the human. Like, we don't know whether they're going to have as many children as my generation, for example. I'm a Generation X, I think it is. I don't know, 1979.
Doesn't matter.
You know,
But
so
it seems to be a very young community.
yes, and they are. I mean, from what I am gathering from my clients, the younger ones are staying home, and the houses are becoming multi-generational homes, and that's huge with the Hispanic community. So we can talk about that. We can talk about a house where abuela and abuelo are there, grandma and grandpa, and then mom and dad that are that sandwich, that nice little sandwich that, oh my goodness, I'm in, and it's really a busy life, a busy time in life. And then you've got the little ones. The little ones, you know, are minors, but then you've got mom and dad, mommy and papi, that are older. And then we've got the Hispanic culture aspects. Some things are difficult to speak about. For example, death and getting older. Some Hispanics think that speaking about it will make it happen. So I have to be very proactive and say, look, I'm still alive. I mean, I talk about this every day, still here. A health directive would do your child a lot of good because it can help her help you. So there's a lot of educating and using psychology so that I always focus on the unity of the family, keeping the legacy of union going. So instead of, I kind of reframe basically, instead of the older aging parent thinking, oh, I'm gonna lose control over my own body. Okay, no, you're not. This is to allow your daughter, which is because it's typically the eldest daughter, even if it's a middle child, doesn't matter. The daughter's the one that is expected. It's like an unspoken thing, sometimes spoken, sometimes very spoken, very bluntly. That adult is going to be the one that, you know, needs the HIPAA release, needs to take the aging parent to the hospital, to the doctor, communicate between hospitals, etc. So the health directives would give that adult child a very powerful tool to help that adult. So, and then when I frame it that way, that they have the power to make the decision themselves, but it's just so that she can help you, then they're more willing. Then they get it, they understand, because it's about preserving their dignity. And I frame it that way too. Your daughter loves you. There's no way that your daughter would do something against you. It's to preserve and to protect your voice, what you want. So that's one thing. And then speaking about death, some take it very personal when you approach them about it. Oh, I haven't even died and you just want my money. I don't know if that's just Hispanic. I think that's global. Like, you tell me.
It's global.
Yeah, that's global. I haven't even died. You're already, you know. So we've had some family meetings where we have spoken, and I've kind of mediated and explained. And I have guides. I have free guides in English and in Spanish on my website that I give to people so that they understand what the probate system is in Florida and how tedious it is and how it can lead to litigation and how you don't want that because you've been protecting the sanctity of the union of your children for decades. So this is a way that you can do it when you're no longer there, so that they don't end up in court. Because I've seen some doozies where siblings go at it over furniture, let alone big amounts of money. Because
That's universal too.
Oh, that I'm sure, yeah. I've seen a lot of that. Every color, every. Yes, and it's sometimes about the most minute, a sofa, because grandma sat on
emotional.
that sofa. It's an emotional attachment. And then you've got the sibling rivalry that comes to surface. You know, you were always the favorite one. That's not fair, etc. Because there's just so much pain over the mourning process. So these are things that, you know, I tell the adult, the matriarch, I'm the patriarch, and I explain, you know, you've been since they were little. No, don't fight when I'm not here. You're going to have each other. Because my mom told us that, because I'm one of three. And yeah, we brawled. I mean, we were kids. So she would tell us, you guys, when I'm not here, you have each other and you always stay together. So, you know, you teach that too through webinars, through meetings with them, through social media, videos, guides, in-person seminars that I do. I try to educate as much as possible. So I'm constantly presenting. And
Sonia, let me go back to a topic you mentioned. It's not maybe in order, but I think it's worthwhile. Multi-generational houses. So I had a client recently, and there were 3 siblings that owned homes, and they each owned separate homes. And what the goal was is they wanted to protect those homes. 2 of the siblings didn't have children, 1 had children. So the idea was that each sibling wanted to be assured of living in their home for the rest of their life. And then on the death of each of the siblings, they wanted the 1 set of children to inherit all the homes, and the homes that would no longer be lived in would be rentals that they wanted to keep in the family for future generations. So you had 3 siblings, only 1 set of kids, multi-generational. And some of the issues that came up were, and this particular family was all in New Jersey, where they had an inheritance tax. And some of the people that they viewed as family, in air quotes, because I'm not sure of the relationship, would have triggered a New Jersey inheritance tax. And another issue was, it's almost like the title to the different properties. First of all, no one had a clue who owned what. And when I finally got copies of the deeds, because I had to see it because they had no understanding, it was like was thrown into a mixing machine, a mixing bowl, because it was completely random, with 2 siblings owning a house that the other sibling lived in, and the house she lived in, she didn't own anything in. And I actually came up with what I thought was a creative solution, but the complexity was, I don't think they believed the disaster they were facing, both legally because title was so screwed up. From an insurance perspective, I was worried none of their insurance might be valid, because who's living in which house? Is it rental? What is it? And what I had proposed was creating a dynastic trust, putting all the houses in one trust, because everyone, you know, there's no, you know, the estate tax exemption, the gift tax exclusion are so high, and the GST exemption is so high, they could have put everything into a dynastic trust, have some detail about whatever it is that they wanted. I probably would have had, if they would have let me, an LLC owning each of the properties, or at least one LLC, just because I like to do that. But it could have even been directly by the trust, and had a dynastic trust that listed everyone's right to live everywhere, and the children ultimately getting the property, and by the way, them protecting it in case one of the kids gets divorced or sick or has a problem. But the solution, I guess the first question for you to comment on is, I don't think that's an uncommon situation, but it's not one that everyone sees all the time. And the solution I thought was kind of creative, and it was a little bit of an off-label application of a dynastic pot trust or a sprinkle trust for lots of beneficiaries. We tend, when we go to conferences and hear about a dynastic trust, we think of GST planning and people with a lot of wealth, and we think of, historic, traditional family structures. This was none of the above, but some slight adaptation of common planning tools for a different purpose sounded to me like it really addressed these kind of issues. How common is that, and anything you want to say on that?
Very common, very, very common. So in Miami, to sell a house, I work with a lot of real estate attorneys because of this. And, to be a real estate agent, it's easier, right? And back when the real estate market was booming, everybody was a real estate agent. So now it's not that way, but there were a lot of real estate agents making a ton of money in South Florida. And what you would see on the titles was, oh my goodness. And they would bring the contract to the closing table. And there was no way that was going to be sold that day. And I mean, until now, I still work with real estate attorneys that bring me titles that don't even have the person that's sitting on the closing table on that deed. And the real estate agent doesn't know. And then some of these real estate attorneys don't know either. So then they just send it to me and ask me, okay, what do you do? Just like do something, draft something, because they don't understand estate planning. So I work very closely with real estate attorneys, and in Miami, that's super common. And I think it's because in other countries, they don't remember the government. There might not even be an equivalent to the state or the State Department or whatever the recording office.
The county recording office.
Right. There's nothing like that in that country, or there is, but it doesn't matter, so then you just kind of keep the government out of the house and keep your children in there. And you see it really often. You see houses where, there's multiple generations that continue living in there, and now the roof is collapsing, so they need to take out a HELOC or they need to get some benefit program or anything like that. But then when they call a real estate attorney to get the deed, because of course they don't know where to get the deed, they're not on that deed. And there's no will, there's no trust, there's nothing. There's just, oh, mommy left me the house or papi left me the house.
Right. I think what practitioners have to do is, even if the client says, I own this home that I'm living in, get a copy of the deed. A title rundown is very inexpensive to get from a title company, and sort it out. And when the particular client is telling you where they want the home to go when they pass, it may not just be, my home, the kids are going to sell it, they'll split the money, there's nothing to think about. It can be, for many clients, very different. So you need to creatively address by starting with, what are the facts, what is it that they want, and then how do you connect it? And you may find different applications of trust, LLCs, dynastic trusts, etc., may be necessary to craft something that gets them where they want to go. Let's move on, because we still have a lot of material to cover. On the next slide, we have a statistic that's pretty significant, and I think it's important for you to comment on. 82% of Hispanics do not have a will or rev trust. They don't have an estate plan. Why so low?
I think it's just the lack of trust and the lack of knowledge. Because remember, a lot of countries don't even have probate court. So they don't know why you would need a trust.
So education is really critical.
I think there's just no information. Estate planning has been like a guarded, like gate kept, you look a certain way, you're a certain age, and you're a certain SES, and that's for wealthy and millionaires. That's for the rich. That's for the rich people. And
what is SES?
socioeconomic status,
Oh,
so I think it's just lack of information. But with social media, social media has its negatives, definitely. I'm a mom of a teenager. Yes, I can see, and myself, I can see the risk of social media. But the good thing is that it has democratized information. You don't have to have the right connections now, or be part of the golf club to know what an estate plan is, to know why you should have a trust. You just get on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, and you're able to learn about these things for free, as long as you have internet, obviously. So that's
and
the great part.
sometimes the information is even accurate. Sometimes, not too often.
Sometimes it's accurate. What do you know? Exactly.
Sonia, let's shift gears. And this is something you said was very important for the Hispanic community generally. And look, we understand in what we're doing that we're making generalizations, but sometimes you need to make generalizations to understand a community and some of the focus. But I think from the data that we've seen and from your personal comments, as a general statement, the Hispanic community tends to be far more Christian and far more religious than perhaps the population as a whole. Although younger people in the community are tending to move away from faith. Maybe comment on that generally and how important it is, and any thoughts you want to share.
Thank you for mentioning that. This is a generalization, and I hope that I am representing my culture and my community as accurately and well as possible, because I only want to make my community proud. So I hope I don't say anything that is offensive in any way. But yeah, we believe in religion is big and Christianity is big. Of course, there's Jews that are Jewish and Islamic and Buddhist and other religions, but Christianity is a big section just because of history. The church would go and convert, and make schools and help the poor. So of course, and then there's the community aspect. You go to church to socialize, and Hispanics tend to be all about family. So then you go with your whole family, and then you end up, marrying other people in the religion, and then it just continues, and it's part of the structure of society. You go to church on Sunday, it's part of your routine. So I think that might be why it's a big deal, and it does take a big role in the way you raise your children, in the way that you see life, and in the way you see health directives.
That's very important, because religious implications for any faith, but certainly for Christians as well, is something that should be reflected in healthcare documents. And you have to be very careful, because so many of the standard forms, even forms lawyers use as standard forms, are violative of religious beliefs and customs. So you have to be very careful. I think one of the reasons to be aware of this topic is that statistics suggest that a large percentage of the Hispanic population is religious, and that religion is almost generally Christian. And for many clients, my experience is that most practitioners don't feel that they should raise a discussion about religion unless the client brings it up, and then they can respond to it. I'm not sure that's the right answer, because the clients, especially given some of the background comments that Sonia has made, may not understand that their religious faith can affect their estate planning documents. And if the client says, no, I'm atheist, I don't care, that's fine, but you asked. And I think it's important to ask, which may be different than how practitioners handle other clients.
Right. An example this is an example because I have a 100-year-old grandfather, and I go with mommy to the hospital to take abuelo. And they let us know that the protocol of hospitals, and I think it's all hospitals, is that they resuscitate the person. When you are 100 and you're thin and your little bones are delicate, that is a very aggressive thing to them. So you have to talk to people about things like that are uncomfortable. And maybe they don't want to be resuscitated because they believe that is God's way. They shouldn't have a machine that jolts them back to life because that's their time. You know, so I tend to talk about very delicate things with people. And I think that as attorneys, it's not just like forms, you know, this is about protecting them. And to protect them, you have to get to the real stuff, because only if they feel comfortable with you and trust you will they tell you, the uncle is an alcoholic. I don't want that uncle going near my child. Or, you know, like anything. Or my daughter has a gambling problem. Or I don't like the boyfriend. I need to protect my daughter because I think that's going to be a divorce waiting to happen. So only when they feel open, like when they feel safe with you, will they divulge the information that you need.
You didn't call my mother-in-law to find out how unhappy she is, did you? So one of the areas that faith is very important, Christian religious beliefs and doctrines, and there's a lot of variability, and we're not going to get into it, but is in nutrition, hydration. Many people view Christian religious doctrine as saying you can't starve somebody, but there are differences. You know, there's a difference between feeding somebody in a normal fashion to some versus having a medical procedure in an operating room under anesthesia to insert a peg to feed somebody directly into the stomach. But those are important questions to have. I'm going to skip through the religious stuff because we have a lot of other topics that we want to cover in the time that we have. But I do want to point out that on the slides, there are some comments on Christian considerations for estate planning and how it affects different legal documents in the estate planning. There's also, in addition to healthcare considerations, charitable planning, very, very common for people of faith to want to make a bequest. And I think it's important to just point something out. It may help the client of faith feel they're doing the right thing to leave a bequest and to even state, I am leaving this bequest because I want to demonstrate how important my church was to my life and how I want you to continue these traditions. You can say that in a document. Too often we as planners get involved in harvesting highly appreciated stocks to donate to charity or using a non-grantor trust for charitable donations. But in many cases, it's just a bequest to make a point that's really important on a human level to the client. And if you have 60+% of Hispanics Christian and of faith, this could be something that they want to do as well. So charitable planning can be very, very important, and there's some biblical background and other things like that. Sonia, let's change gears and talk about some family and financial considerations. So for example, and I'm going to let you talk for a minute about the type of assets and how the background of many in the Hispanic community and the countries they come from have affected the types of assets they prefer and why.
Okay. So I see a lot of business owners. Immigrants tend to come to the US, and a lot of them are professionals in their country, but because they need a new license over here, or they need to go back to school, or just because of language, they're not able to get the licensure. So they start businesses. Entrepreneurs, there's a huge entrepreneurial population in the Hispanic community, and there are no business succession plans. So this is a huge problem that needs to be addressed, because they're willing to sacrifice their life for their children. They're willing to move out of their country. They're willing to start businesses and devote their life to it. But then the business ends up dying with them because they don't have the correct legal planning for it. So that's one thing that they tend to really focus on. The other is real estate. South Florida is primarily, I don't know what the actual percent is, but South Florida has an enormous amount of Hispanic residents. And there's a lot of real estate that is owned by foreign nationals, basically. Immigrants that have come from Latin America, immigrants that have fled their country and put their money into real estate because they know that real estate is a safe asset that they can't lose, or that it's less likely to be lost. So real estate is a big one. I don't know that they trust the stock as much as Americans, because they might not have a good relationship with the stock, with the market coming from their country, or it just may not be a thing for them. But I do know that real estate is huge, and entrepreneurship, because even housekeeping, you know, you can get yourself a mop of room and start a business. And then if you do things right, you can grow your business, or you can be a good cook, or you can be a great caregiver and you start a childcare business. And then you keep that going, and now you've got several daycares, and now you want to leave that for your children, or you assume you're going to leave it to your children, but you don't have a business succession plan. So then the company dies with you, or the spouse ends up killing it, you know, because the spouse of your child gets involved and destroys it. Just minor things that happen with business.
Why do you feel it's so common? I'm just trying to understand why formal succession planning you feel is dealt with less, and what do lawyers and other advisors do to address that?
I think it's just lack of knowledge. You'd be amazed at how many people run businesses without even, oh my goodness, an operating agreement. I have a dental client, I have a dental business who is our dentist, like the family dentist. I love them dearly. When I was having like a cleaning, I started talking about what I do for a living. I've been going there for like 15 years now. And we were just talking randomly because, oh, I know, because their family is so amazingly united, and they all work together, and it's just phenomenal. So I was asking the mom, who is a dentist, what's the secret? Please, I'm gonna take notes. And she said, God. That was her number one, God. And number two, to buy everybody the same gift so that there was no jealousy. But there's God again, you know, God's the number one. So after talking for like half an hour, they told me, okay, I need to hire you. We need to get this done. Then I start the hire, you know, after we hire them, I start looking, and there's not even an operating agreement. there's a lot of money there. There's not an operating agreement. There's nothing. There's nothing. There's no will. There's no trust. Certainly not a buy-sell agreement. There's a partnership. You know, the spouses are both dentists. The child, one of the children, is a dentist. So then I have to explain how, you know, it's the type of business like a law firm in Florida that has to be run and owned by a licensed professional in that field. I know that with law, it's becoming different in other states, but in Florida, as of today, you still have to be a licensed attorney to own and run a law firm. So that's just an example. And these are educated people. You know, these are two educated people that have had and run a dental clinic for decades. So imagine people that are not as educated. There's a big need for information. And
so you find that common, that the formality of the succession planning,
yes,
is not addressed. So that's certainly something practitioners should try to be aware of. And from what you're saying, it sounds like education is probably the first step. You had mentioned, and I don't know how common it is, we didn't really talk about that aspect of many people in the community sending money back to family overseas, caring for family members, whether here or overseas. How does that affect planning?
Well, okay, so the person is overseas, so that's a whole other law. So what I have done is, for example, I've got a client that has children here, and mom and dad are in another country in Latin America. So they have included in the trust, and they, you know, and I stated to the trustee that mom and dad are to have a certain amount of money every month. And then she actually has an account that is set out specifically for mom and dad. And then they just send it through one of these places that send money. But because mom and dad are probably gonna pass away over there because of, you know, immigration status, they can't come in here. So it's a little complicated when there's family outside, and it gets even more complicated when the person passes away out there, and then the survivors are here, or both, in and out, and then the assets are here. Because then that involves probate. That involves probate here with remote online notaries to be able to notarize the petitions while the people are, like, I've got one in Germany right now, another one in Venezuela. And luckily, you know, I use remote online notaries and we're able to get it done. But those are a lot more time consuming for them and for me. I still have one open. And then just to open the designatory account, that's a pain because they need the ITIN number. They don't have a social security number. So that's a whole thing, which is currently pending. And I'm not sure what's happening with the IRS if the website's even up right now. So
Let me make a couple of general planning comments. What Sonia has painted a picture of is that it's very common to have multi-generational families, people that may have more diverse gifting patterns than the typical one that practitioner sees. Typically, you'll see a parent giving to a child, maybe a grandchild, but here you may have a child giving to a parent, you may have a child giving to aunts and uncles, and even cousins. We've seen it all. So a couple of comments very quickly on this slide of how that may affect planning. First, you may want to look at, if the client's comfortable, life insurance to backstop some of these financial commitments. So if there is a business or real estate that's going to go one way or for certain heirs, but they've been supporting other heirs, you may want to use insurance to provide the liquidity. Another point, the gift provisions, the standard approach will not work if people are having as intended beneficiaries, donees, a broader class of people. You have to make sure that the class of beneficiaries is clearly indicated. And one of the things that I've seen happen is there may be a certain aunt and uncle that is being helped, but not every aunt and uncle. So you have to be careful how you draft this stuff because you want to make sure that whatever the particular client wants, like this aunt, but not the other one, you want to clarify it so there's no ambiguity, and you certainly don't want fights later. Another concept, and I'll give you the traditional use of it, just like I talked about a dynasty trust owning multiple homes so that everyone could have a home to live in and avoid inheritance tax and fights in terms of probate and pass it on to the people they want. Here's another slight variation. The standard planning for a traditional, and they don't exist that often, but a traditional family is, let's say mom and dad set up a trust under their wills, under the revocable trust for when the second of them dies. We have a pot trust, a sprinkle trust, one trust for all the children, so that while the children, until the youngest child is say 18 or 21, all the money's in one pot. This way, if a child has a particular need, they can get more or less, whatever's appropriate. And then once the kids are 21, you divide up the money equally by child. It's a very common technique. So you have a pot or sprinkle trust. When the youngest child turns 21, then it breaks up into separate trusts for each child. But consider the family where they're supporting elderly parents, an aunt and uncle, a cousin. You may want to take this sprinkle trust, even if they have no children, and have that trust last, if there are children, not till when the youngest child is age 18, but to when the later of the youngest child is age 18, or these enumerated people that we're supporting and helping die. So it may go on longer, and then you break it up to the children. You could theoretically have separate trusts for the children supporting all these people, but that can get very complicated. And if the children are trustees of their own trust, how do you know they're going to really do it? So the parents may feel more comfortable naming a friend or another family member, a combination of people as trustees, having that broad category of beneficiaries or distributees, and then have the trust end when they all pass and the kids are of age. Two other really quick points. If clients have meaningful wealth and they're supporting family members, and apparently from everything that Sonia has been saying, in the Hispanic community, it's much more common to have close-knit large families where people are supporting. If the wage earner, the breadwinner, is earning money and paying a high tax, it may be advantageous to set up a non-grantor trust that can sprinkle income to these lower bracket people. If they're getting help financially, it means they're not in a high bracket tax-wise, or they wouldn't be getting help. So a non-grantor trust could be a perfect planning tool to save income tax each year, instead of the breadwinner, if you will, paying tax at 37 plus 3.8% on some of their earnings plus state tax. If it trust owns some of the passive assets and distributes the income out, you can sprinkle it to the people in the lowest bracket. Another and final concept, and I'll be quick, is upstream basis planning. So if I create a trust and I have an elderly aunt that I'm supporting as a beneficiary, if I also gave her a general power of appointment, we're not going to get into the details, just the concept, on her death, those assets in the trust that I created are included in her estate. They get a tax basis step up, and I eliminate all the inherent capital gain. When you have families where there are low income, low net worth family members that are getting ongoing support, that's a perfect relationship for doing upstream basis planning. So what I've tried to do with these quick comments is talk about some of the drafting and tax planning that the family, the common family traits that and characteristics that Sonia's painted can lead to. So there's a lot of valuable planning ideas that we can do for lots and lots of these people. Sonia, let's change gears a little bit further, but staying on family. You talk about reframing a lot of the estate planning conversations, because family is so incredibly important. And you talked about how family units can be different, and we can talk about perhaps how extended the families are. Maybe you should comment on that.
Oh, well, I mean, you can definitely have, for example, I see their cousins. You can have a house where, you know, mom and dad are in their 70s, let's say, and then there's two siblings living there with their children. So, you know, it's a lot of people in there. And the house is owned by mom and dad. And they assume that the children are going to get it. But then now those two, let's say those two daughters were single, they were divorced. So they were coming back home to live with mom and dad. But then now they're married, and now they're going to fight over the house, you know, because, and one of them assumes that it's hers because she lived there longer, or because she paid the roof, or because she took care of mom. You know, there's just so many things that happen, and that's not just Hispanic. That can be anybody. That can be avoided.
I've seen, if you ask me for the single most common scenario where there have been fights, it's over where there's a large home. A lot of times it's been like a duplex, 2-family home, and I've seen a lot of 4-family homes, and everyone's fighting who gets it, who gets to live there. Often one of the family members, whether it's a kid or another relative, is living there, won't move out. They can't sell the house. It just, but
Yep.
you can solve and avoid all those issues with a proper plan once you start with who really owns title, what is it that the family wants, and it may be more complex and legally formal to have the trust arrangements that can accomplish it, but the cost and the animosity created by fights over a home are just incredible, because it's not like fighting over money. It's worse. You're living there. Yes, it'll destroy the family.
Mm-hmm. And in Florida, you can have what's called a ladybird deed, an enhanced life estate deed. So there's simple ways to do this that are not even necessarily a full estate plan. So, you know, I speak about that to the Hispanic community as well, because a lot of people don't know that, and it's only available in certain states, Florida being one of them.
Can you define a ladybird deed, because we don't have it where I practice?
So a ladybird deed is basically,
every time I hear the word, I think of Ladybird Johnson. So
it's an enhanced life estate deed, and it does not in any way take away any control or power over the owner. It just allows the current owner to give the title once they pass away. So that way it bypasses probate. And then it just, I mean, the individual that's the remainder person or the remainder man basically has to just file the death certificate and make a quitclaim deed. And then once that's recorded, then it becomes the individuals, the survivor, the remainder man. That can be a problem when there's more than one sibling or, you know, on the title, or I mean, I see that as that being the problem, you know, because then you have to have a partition, it's a whole thing. But for designating it to just one child, it's a way, a much more cost-effective legal tool than a complete trust. And it can be really good for someone that's all they have, you know.
Sonia, one of the things that you said when we were planning this program about planning for the Hispanic community is changing the frame. I'm going to just read what you wrote and then let you comment on it. Estate planning isn't about preparing for death. It's about protecting family unity and honoring legacy. Why don't you just elaborate on that for a minute or two?
So the way that I can have this job, which is, you know, around death, because you're planning or someone has passed away that you loved, I assume, or is very close to you. The way that I can have this job, to be honest, and keep my own mental health is that I see it as protecting the family unity, which is sacred, protecting it from potential probate, which can be a very risky activity for that unity. Aside from it being costly, aside from it being tedious, stressful, it is a risk to the union that the parents have worked their whole life for those children that are now typically they're adults. So I focus around that. I refrain from thinking about death to keeping the legacy going of the importance of family for the Hispanic community and for any client. I mean, really, that's how I speak to my clients, because they've been giving, you know, like I'm a mom of, I have a little one, an 8-year-old. So, you know, I read bedtime stories. And in a lot of the bedtime stories or stories I come up with, it's all about teaching them values and teaching my little one, Gianluca, you and Gianna are going to be together forever. Gianna's the 14-year-old. When mommy and papi are not here, you're going to protect each other. You're always going to have each other's backs. And like me, there's a lot of parents that's what we teach them. Family is everything. You want to always have each other's back. And when mom and dad are not here anymore, a trust is something that you can leave to help that. So that way it's not just like spoken with words like, oh yeah, I love the family. You know, they're going to be together and friends forever. But this is acting on it. This is not just saying it out, you know, saying it to sound good. It's taking action. Learning that you can do that, because you have to know so that you can do better. And then doing it, you know, and not being afraid that because you do it, you're going to die, because it doesn't work that way. That's just a taboo or a superstition.
Sonia, another thing you mentioned, and this is quite different than most of the clients that I see, the strength and dominance of family and reframing the conversation. One of the things you mentioned in that context, and we've already talked about the ethical issues, we can skip that, but just comment on family meetings and how you find that helpful and how common you find that in the Hispanic community.
So that's very common. I receive emails from the adult child a lot. I need a consultation because mommy needs Medicaid, and mommy needs, you know, they Google something, mommy needs Medicaid, mommy's getting older, I need this, right? So I have to email them back.
That says a lot. The child's not saying mom needs it, I need it. They're so identifying. And this is not a kid trying to squeeze the money out of the parent.
No.
They care so deeply about the parent that I need it.
Yes, exactly, right, exactly. I literally have a case like this right now. The adult son is taking care of the mom, and they're actually wanting to pre-plan, which is wonderful, wonderful, so much better than emergency planning. And he called me, and I told him, okay, well, you're not the client, you know, like I gave him a very general explanation of how Medicaid works and what we can do and what's available. And then I told him, let's do a consultation with mommy, with your mommy. And this is a man that is in his early 60s that, you know, refers to his mom as mommy. So that's totally cultural. And we had the consultation, and I asked the client, is it okay if I have, if so-and-so is present? And she said, oh, yes, actually, I want him present, and I want the other son to be present, because they take turns, and I want everybody on the same page. Okay, no problem. So, you know, there's waivers, there's things that need to happen with other clients don't need to happen. And then there's the cultural differences too in the Hispanic countries. One country might be matriarch, others might be patriarch. Oh, and machismo. Machismo can get involved. So that's a lot of psychology and cultural sensitivity that I have to apply, because I understand machismo. I understand it.
How can I recognize the difference? What would I do? I'm
Okay.
sure I would say all the wrong things.
A super easy way. Who's talking the most? Who's talking first? Who's asking the questions? You know, in some of these situations, the woman doesn't speak. So I have to, you know, I have to start conversations with the woman to make sure she's on the same page, to make sure she's understanding what's happening, you know, to kind of like even out the situation. Sometimes I've been told by the man, no. I'm the one that pays. She's not gonna, she agrees.
Oh, that's dangerous.
You better believe it. So that's gonna be, you know, that's gonna be me looking further in there, because I don't like the sound of that. And you know, when it's something that I just don't agree or get a very bad feeling, I don't work with them. I don't work with everybody, you know. That's the wonderful thing about owning your own firm. You get to choose who you work with.
Sonia, we're going to have to wrap up soon. I see your partner behind you.
Yes,
Mateo.
my favorite paralegal.
Paralegal. Comment on language. I don't speak Spanish. I have no knowledge whatsoever. What do I do in these circumstances?
Okay, so
I guess I have to hire you as co-counsel so that we can address the language.
That's what everyone should do.
But
awareness.
what can be done? And one of the things I've seen happen, which is very disturbing, people will go and feed documents into AI and have them translated. I don't speak whatever the other language is. I have no idea how inaccurate, I didn't even use the word accurate, inaccurate those translations are. Just comment on language.
And they're very literal. And Spanish is backward to English. So English is Germanic, Spanish is a Romance language, and the sentence structure is opposite. So when things are being translated from English to Spanish, they're literal, so the sentence structure is wrong, and the meaning can be very different, you know. And with drafting trusts and translating them and summarizing them, it's all about the words. So there's a lot of liability. I would not be using AI or ChatGPT or any of these to translate. I would definitely use a live translator that, you know, can
properly licensed.
Yeah.
One of the things you told me is that some of the concepts that we have here don't exist.
Right.
To translate. You know, do we have a GST allocation? How do you translate that? Don't answer that. I don't even want to know. But what do you do with some of the concepts? You can't really translate word to word because they may not exist.
right? So what I do is I actually apply my mothering skills. So my little one, he doesn't want to speak Spanish. Okay. He's lucky. I'm very persistent. That boy is going to speak Spanish. So when he doesn't understand what I'm asking him in Spanish, say it in English. No, I don't speak English. Because that's the only way. You gotta force them to learn it. So then he tells me, explain it to me, the word, whatever word he's not understanding. So then I explain what that word means. So I do the same with adults, with these legalese terms also, even in English. I don't really speak in legalese. I find that in my personal experience, when I was a younger attorney, I needed to speak the language, because I looked younger, I guess, so there is a little bit of age discrimination in the law. So you have to, speak a certain way, or you feel that, especially as a woman, especially as a minority woman, because remember, I look the way I look, so I have a different experience. But now that I've been doing this for over 2 years, over 2 decades, 2 years, 2 decades,
2 years.
I don't speak in legalese. When I present in English and in Spanish, I start out with, check me if I say a single word that you don't understand. If I drop a legalese word in here, please immediately interrupt me, because I don't like using it. I don't like speaking at you. I'm not doing that. I don't want to intimidate you. I don't want to make you feel like there's dumb questions. I want plain English or plain Spanish. So that's how I work with them.
We're going to have to go fast because we're going to have to wrap up in a couple minutes. I think we've talked about the depth of cultural values, the importance of the church. You mentioned when we spoke a common situation of the oldest daughter being a caretaker. Can you comment on that?
That's definitely a cultural expectation. The machismo gets involved, just life kind of, women tend to be, I don't know if that's going to offend people, but I think women tend to be
Go
more
for it.
maternal.
Everybody offends everybody nowadays. Just say it.
Oh, that's true. Exactly. I mean, I grew up with a very tough skin. And I'm so thankful, because I value honesty. I love it. So yeah, the women tend to be maternal, whether they have children or not. They're just more nurturing, and they're more willing and likely to take care of mom and dad, because it is hard to take care of anyone, but to take care of your mom and dad, who are the boss, because Hispanic culture also, my mom tells me what to do still, and tells me what I'm doing wrong on a daily basis, pretty often. And I value it, because I have her, and now I have my own children, and now I'm able to see it like a good thing. Like, she's leaving her legacy by teaching me these things and reminding me of these things, as opposed to when I was a teenager, that I saw it like, oh my goodness, I know everything, mommy.
What
So
do
we
you do
change
do you adjust anything in an estate plan if the daughter, as opposed to the sons, or the oldest daughter as opposed to the other daughters, is going to be the caregiver? Do you provide for extra compensation or extra bequests? Do people do that?
It depends on the situation. It depends on the money that's available. It depends on the expectation of the parent. A lot of parents expect it, and they're grateful, and they have the money, so then they compensate them, because sometimes that child has to give up their job, and they need money to be able to provide for their own children. So it's very situational.
So we gotta wrap up, and I'd like you to do that. Why don't you take just a couple of minutes and try to summarize for people that are not familiar with Hispanic culture or background, what are some of the highlights of what they need to keep in mind when representing Hispanic clients?
Hispanic community is extremely tight. So when you have one Hispanic client and you have a good experience with them, they will refer people to you. So that's a reason why you should listen to this. We give a lot of value to the relationship with the attorney. You have to be a trusted advisor. not a form filler, not a face on a bench, not a face on a commercial. Well, that does have some value, but you know, they have to have relatability. They have to identify with you. So it's a lot of educating, it's a lot of communication, it's a lot of speaking in their language, whether that's you or someone in your staff that can help you. Spanglish also, a lot of us like Spanglish. And there's a lot of business owners in the Hispanic community. We're very hardworking, and a lot of us have immigrated. So we come with the experience, remember, of not knowing that a trust even exists or why we would need it, or a business succession plan, or a deed for that matter, because we assume that the business is going to pass on to our children, that that's just, you know, common sense because the children are working there, or that the house is going to be for the child that is living there. And they don't understand that there's even probate in this country, because in a lot of countries there's no probate system. So a lot of communication, a lot of compassion, obviously, because we all need compassion, especially in this field. And educating yourself, you know, just the fact that you are watching this, I thank you as a Hispanic and as an attorney and as a woman, because it means that you care. So, and I'm really happy to have been chosen and been able to do this.
So thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully, I know this is not technical, but I think very important. It's a huge part of our country and a huge part of everyone's client base or potential client base. And hopefully Sonia's thoughts and lens has given you some better understanding of helping Hispanic clients. And as I said in the beginning in the introduction, I'm honored to have done this with Sonia. It was a great learning experience for me. We will create a pretty detailed article on this at some point and try to circulate that as well. And if you have other ideas for similar topics for different cultures or groups of people, please let me know, and I'm happy to help. Sonia, thank you everybody, and good luck.
Thank you.